Well, hi, it's me again.
Tim again.
Welcome to TSG Live Talking Trains, and I'm reminded of an old Beatles song, and I get by with a little help from my friends, and I have a little help from my friends here this week. First things first, I have to put up a little picture here. Oh, there it is. So the most fun you've ever had model railroading, sadly, is being postponed. But do not fret, because we're still going to talk about something really fun. And these two guys to my immediate right here are part of that. This is 2/3 of the presentation we were going to have, but the other third of the presentation was unavailable at the last minute. So we're going to postpone that other program. And I want you to take a really good look at that thumbnail, because when that thumbnail comes back again, but without the blue postponed at the bottom, make sure you catch that one, because it's going to be a presentation that these guys gave at the PCR convention a few months ago in San Luis Obispo. That was a really, really good presentation. And I thought with Dave, the third person unable to come today, that it would be better to have the BLT intact for the official presentation. So
Got to have the lettuce.
that's right.
Yes.
So we'll be doing that some at a date yet to be determined, but we will get to it. Oh, by the way, I'm John. This is Tom. That's Charlie, and all the way over there. Hi,
John.
hi, Murph. And you might recognize these guys because you usually see Charlie driving the TSG Uber, and Tom's usually in the back seat sitting next to Sydney when we're going to op sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what we're going to be talking about later on.
Mhm.
Model railroad operations. It should be a really, really fun presentation. But before we get to that, we have something else to do. First off, a couple things. I need to talk to you about this. What is this, you say? The 2025 Western Pacific Historical Convention, which is going to be a joint convention with the Western Pacific and Rio Grande modeling societies, I think is what they're referred to, railroad historical societies. In any case, this is something that's going to be happening in person in Sacramento, California in September, if memory serves. Oh, there it is, September 11th through the 14th. It's right there in the picture. And the reason that we're involved with this, when I say we, I'm talking about me and Sydney, or talking about me, yes, talking about myself. Anyway, we're going to be presenting the virtual side of this convention because these people decided that they wanted to do a hybrid convention, and we seem to be the people that get asked to do that when people want to do hybrid conventions. So that's something that you'll get more information sometime on the channel here, possibly on the next Talking Trains show. It just depends. We're going to be working with the people that are organizing this convention, and we'll come with some good promotional stuff in the near future. So put that on your calendars. And if you can't be in Sacramento, that's okay, because you'll be able to join us virtually as well, which is the whole point behind that. So, whoa, there's that. Oh, look, we're still small.
There we go.
There we are.
go. We're back.
I've only been using StreamYard for 4 or 5 years now, but in my defense, they keep changing stuff, and I think that's what happened there. Now I'm going to bring on someone who actually introduced me to StreamYard. Yes, that's right. We're talking about Sparky 107. Hi, Dave. Sparky.
Good evening, railroaders.
Yeah, I almost called you Dave. Sorry about that, Dave. Sparky.
I won't answer you if you call me Dave, because that's that other guy that's not there tonight, right?
Well, but you're here today, so we have the other Dave. It's a B-O-D-T. It doesn't work. Yeah.
No. I think you can drop that right now. So.
Yeah, we're going to have to get the real Dave. Forget this. Okay, never mind.
Oh, I'm starting to feel maybe I shouldn't have introduced you to StreamYards.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so now you're here to talk about the meet and greet that's coming up. Let me just bring up the graphic that we have for this because this has all the information. And we talked about this last month as well. And this is something that you've been doing for a number of years, right? So why not give the viewers a little bit of background on this and then what you're doing?
Yeah, I think I'm going on 9 years now doing the meet and greet, and I've normally done them down in the States, Pennsylvania area, Colorado the one time, but usually what it is basically is I'm going to take a holiday and I tell everybody on YouTube what it is, where it is, and I end up with 100 people meeting me. So just gave it the name meet and greet, and away we went with it. So I've been doing it every year, like I said, for almost 9 years. So, and this year I wasn't going to do one. And then somebody said, why don't you do one in your area in Ontario? I'm like, what's in this area? Like, when you're from an area, you really don't pay attention to what's in your area. So a lot of people were telling me, like the Elgin County Railway Museum, which is crazy because that's what I model on my layout. So that station you see in that picture is actually a 5-foot model on my layout. And Elgin County Railway Museum, I grew up there, walked through that yard all the time. It was full of Conrail and everything else. And now it's got 1 track left to it out of 32, I think. But that's going to be part of the meet and greet is at the Elgin County Railway Museum this year. And I live in the Waterloo area. There's the Waterloo Central Railway. So I ended up talking to a guy that volunteers down there, and he mentioned that I should ask about their dining car. So I did that. So something I've never done in life is had dinner on a train that's moving. Now, I did my meet and greet in Steamtown many years ago, and we did a dining car experience, but the train was stationary. And it's still, I sold out for that event. Had the power car. It was all cooked right on site and everything. It's going to be the same this year. It's all cooked on the railway, but the train's actually moving for a 2-hour trip. So I'm really excited about that part. So Ontario Southland. Yeah, Ontario Southland is the local railway. It's a short line in the area, and they're going to open up their shops for us so we can go in and see some F units, GP units, some Elcos that they got, and they all do their own paint scheme that's kind of sitting there on the screen. That's going to be great just for the fact that a guy named Larry Broadbent is going to be kind of hosting it, not catering, but he's going to be showing us around the shop and telling us stories and stuff like that. The guy has worked for the railroad ever since it was New York Central in the area. Moved to Conrail. Yeah, he went to Conrail. He went to CN. He's worked at the GM locomotive shop or factory, I guess it is, where they build locomotives and things like that. And right now he's presently volunteering at the Port Stanley Railway. So I'm really looking forward to some of the stories that guy can tell just through the years of experience running on this line that I model on my layout. So, and then to top it all off, on Sunday we're going to meet up with Mini Prince.
Oh, yeah, we know that guy.
Yeah.
Bernard,
So, meet up with Bernard, going to kind of tour his little, he calls it mini land or something like that, but it's his little factory room where he does all his 3D printing and stuff like that. We're going to go down and see the Canadian, which is a passenger train that goes from Toronto to British Columbia. Then we're going to go off to a place called Little Canada. And it's, I forget the place in Germany.
Miniature Wonderland.
Yeah, but Little Canada is coast to coast, but it's done in a model railroad fashion, 1/87th scale. And you can see some of the cities, sites, coal mines, Toronto, CN Tower. Like, the exhibit's amazing. You need at least 4 or 5 hours just to go through that alone. So, and the more people we get signed up on my sign-up videos, we get cheaper prices then. So hopefully a lot of people are coming and hit my YouTube site there and sign up. If you don't sign up, I can't get discounts. So yeah, that basically explains it all, unless you got a few questions about it.
The discounts will actually help everybody. So that's, I mean, everybody who's going, right? So
yeah.
Now there is something else that you sent me that I thought was interesting. What's this all about?
Oh, every time I do a meet and greet, I always include a charity of some sort that's railroad related. And this year it's going to be the Elgin County Railway Museum. And the car you're looking at right now is from Rapido. So Rapido sent me 2 cabooses. And I've got one here in my hand that's not done, that's brand new. This car that's in my hand, that's a model, is actually on Ontario Southland tracks. So you'll get to see that.
Should I make you bigger in the picture, Dave, so that people can actually see that?
Sure you can.
I think I know how to do that.
Wrong button.
No, I know. I get it right sometimes. Here we go.
There we go.
Cool.
Yeah, this actual caboose is at Ontario Southlands, and we'll be able to get inside that and take a tour. Or if you want to buy it, it's for sale for $5,000. So,
Oh wow, that's
Oh,
cheap
you're
at
gonna-
half the price.
Yeah, you're gonna
Yeah.
and all the proceeds go to TSG.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, wait, is it 5,000 Canadian or US?
That'd be Canadian, so that's only probably what, $3,800 for you guys?
Something like that. Yeah.
There you go. And you just got to get it moved. That's all. So,
Yeah.
But no,
That's where the real expense comes in. So what's
Yeah.
the difference now? This one on the picture is something else, right?
So that's what I've done with, like I said, I got 2 from Rapido, and I've got 2 garbage cars from Lorne at OVR Trains, and I'm going to graffiti them up, or a friend of mine, Peter, is going to throw some graffiti on it. So that's the one car that he's done so far, and it just represents the meet and greet itself. Canada this year, 2025. The other side's got the picture of the Toronto CN Tower and stuff. And the 4 cars that we're going to be auctioning off, basically, and that'll happen this coming weekend. So
Okay.
that's how I'm going to be
find out?
running. That's how I'm going to be running this. Is like Rapido gave me the 2 cars, OVR gave me 2 cars. We'll get them all decked out. I did this for the Colorado Railroad Museum as well. Get the graffiti and them all decked out for the meet and greet, and then I'll post them up on my channel this weekend as an auction. So in the comments below the video, you can place a bid and see what the first bid was, second, and so on. So you're always beating it. And the winner will get the car and all the proceeds from it, because the cars are donated. They didn't cost me a thing. All the proceeds go to the Elgin County Railroad Museum. So if all 3, like if all the cars sell for $300 each, all that money is going to go right to the Elgin County Railroad Museum. So.
Nice. That's something you don't have to do.
So I think for the Colorado Railroad Museum, we did two or 3 cars, and I'm pretty sure it was close to $600, $700 we raised for. So
Nice.
yeah, it's always some kind of a charity involved with my meet and greet. It's just a kind of, because I get such a big group together, and model railroaders I find are very giving people. And if you think about it, $20 from everybody that's at the meet and greet type thing goes a long way for a nonprofit organization, right?
Oh,
Bases
absolutely.
and all their basis is on volunteer hours and stuff like that, and groups and things like that. So give them a little bit of extra funding, and why not? They're going to open their doors to us and host us, show us around, give us a tour. So that's it.
Great.
That's all I got.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing again. I don't know about next month yet. I think it'll only be like a day or 2 before the actual event.
Well,
When we're on
hopefully I can come on and I can say my dining car is sold out.
Yeah.
I do have 10 spots left on that dining car and a month to go. So
Okay.
yeah, again, check my channel out on YouTube, and there's videos out there about it and pricing and how to pay and all that stuff. But I want to see everybody there.
Well, you already know that I can't come, so
Well, I was just thinking, like, you were doing the virtual thing, you and Sydney. So one of these times you got to do a virtual meet and greet.
oh,
So you'll have to show up, but everybody else can show up through the virtual side of it. So.
That's kind of cool.
do a virtual meet and
That'd be a
greet
good
right
idea.
here on StreamYard.
Well, no, you got to come to the meet and greet.
Oh, and then do it live from there?
Yeah,
Oh,
It's
Okay.
a roving reporter.
the roving reporters.
Yeah.
I'm being
a
told.
3-day long live stream.
Mhm. That goes the whole time, right? So when everyone's asleep, it's just black.
Well, yeah. Hey, the after parties that we have at the meet and greets are better than some of the events that we actually get to. So
Well, whatever happens at the meet and greet stays at the meet and greet.
Okay. I got to say, most people are bringing their wives. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
that's
you never
nice.
know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I hope
maybe-
to see everybody there and everybody that's in the chat. I think you got 25 people watching now. It'd be great if a few people come up. Like I said, it is in Ontario this year, so in the Toronto area, Kitchener, St. Thomas. So, and you guys got a month. And the big thing too is the American dollar is so high right now. It's like $1.65 or something worth for the Canadian, right? So your money goes a long way. So book your holidays, come on up, spend a week up here, do the meet and greet for the 3 days. But there's a lot more stuff, the Toronto and area and gardens to walk through, all kinds of stuff. So
it sounds like a really nice time.
Yeah. By the way,
Yeah,
if you are
I'll
bringing
get
your
to
wife,
explore the area
the dinner
too.
train's a great thing to do.
What was that? If you're what?
If you're bringing your wife with you to Sparky's convention, the dinner train's the thing to do.
Yeah,
There was
for
a
sure.
year national convention for the NMRA had a dinner train. My wife comes along to all NMRA conventions, and we went on the dinner train, and they had a solve the murder mystery thing on the moving train. And my wife is a mystery bug, and she actually was the one that solved the mystery.
Oh,
which
right on.
was the whole convention for her, I think. So there you go.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to do a mystery thing on your dinner train, Dave?
The mystery will be where'd the food go?
I guess that's better than the mystery, what is this food? So that's,
Yeah, I had a little bit of, what kind of wine is this?
Yeah. It's going to be done by a chef, so it should be really good. So
Sounds good.
Sounds like a first class experience. So
yeah. And then after, like, every night of the meet and greet too, like, my house is right central to the area. The hotel I've told everybody to book at is 7-8 minutes down the road for me. So my shed will be open for the whole weekend as well. Amy will be here. Obviously, she can open the door up. I'll have a couple other people here too. And they can come over and run my layout while I'm out doing the meet and greet and stuff. And if I'm not here, they can knock themselves out and run trains or try to do operations.
Sounds
My layout
good.
is set up for operations. I don't have cards or anything yet. I'm just getting into that kind of thing. But they can fly by the seat of their pants, and I can have up to 8 operators in here and lots of places to take a box car or tank car or a couple of hoppers. You obviously know where they got to go. So that's my operations anyway. But I think you guys are going to talk about operations a little more than what I'm used to. So
yeah, well, it'll be something fun for you to watch then. Listen to us yammer for the next hour and a half or whatever it is.
well, for sure. And I'll be over in the chat, so I'll keep an eye on it.
Well, thanks for sharing again, and I really appreciate what you do, Dave, because you create a space for people for social events and or social interactions, which is something that I can say all 4 of us, I know for sure, when we do op sessions, we're going, a big part of it is for the social aspect of it. So not everybody has a place to go do op sessions or go do ops. So anywhere that can be created for people to enjoy each other's company, I think is a bonus. And
Yeah, it's
what
one
you
thing to
do-
get to know people on YouTube and stuff like that, and you're just a name on YouTube, right? But during the meet and greet, like I said, the one year I had over 108 people or something like that showed up and stuff like that. And at that time, like, you just know their name on YouTube. A lot of times you don't even know what their face looks like because you're looking at trains all the time, right? So it's really great to meet people in person. So
So sometimes it's better, like if you have a face like mine, it's better to look at a train. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. We'll probably talk to you next month. And
All right,
If
great.
we don't, then have a great time with the meet and greet.
it's on a
And,
moving train having dinner, so I'm going to have a great time.
Yeah, sounds like it. All right. Okay, man.
All
We'll talk to you sometime soon.
Take it easy, guys.
Take
All
care,
right.
Sparky.
Oh, and now it's just us again, guys.
I don't know. Dinner in the diner sounds kind of good.
Dinner in a diner. Yeah. Yeah. That's something that, well, actually, no, I have eaten on a moving train. I took the the California Zephyr to Utah one time, and we had dinner in their diner, and it was all right. It was after Amtrak's not known for its fine dining experiences anymore, and I can vouch for that without getting too negative here.
I've had some decent meals on Amtrak. It's, not like I'd compare it to like really fine dining, but
Yeah.
decent steak, decent burgers, that kind of stuff.
Decent
Honestly,
chicken as well.
The biggest thing on Amtrak is you end up getting seated with somebody else on the other side of the table. And I've met a lot of fun people on those trips. I can't remember a time it was ever bad. Probably the most fun actually was going up to Portland Nationals. And that's when I actually met Dave Griffey, who was a longtime member of SVL. And we formed quite a friendship over our time traveling up to Portland, and I became part of his maintenance and operating crew for quite a while. So you can have a lot of fun on a train.
Yep. And you never know who you'll meet, right?
Yep, exactly.
Well, that's not what we were going to talk about initially.
Yeah, you're making me hungry now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So once again, Tom, to my immediate right, Charlie, we do a lot of op sessions and have done a lot of op sessions together. And also you too, Murph. I mean, we operate over at Ray's usually. I've been to SVL operating.
And I've been to Dave's, our missing L.
Right. And what about Rick Fortin's? We
Oh,
all operate in a lot of the same layouts, and not always at the same time. Like I know, Tom, you guys do ops over at Dave's sometimes, like on Tuesdays, don't you?
Right, yeah, the
So-
informal op sessions.
Yeah. But the informal ops are also different from the formal ops because you guys work on the layout too, don't you? No.
Those nights are really just operating nights.
You're right. Work nights are separate.
Oh. See, I learned something. Well, I learned something now, so I guess we can end the stream. So, but I wanted to ask you guys, because I'm trying to remember, and it must have been in the past, let's see, 18 now. It must have been in the past 7 years or so, and I can't remember what my first op session was. So I think I remember what it was, and I think it might even be documented on this channel. And when it's my turn to talk about it, I'll let people know what that is. But do you remember your first op session? And you can go in whatever order you want. I'd like to hear your guys' stories about your first op sessions.
Well, why don't you go,
I'll go.
Tommy?
Why don't you go? Why don't you go?
You first.
Wait, no, I want to go now. No, why don't you go?
It's going to be a long day.
Yeah, this might take a while.
Okay, my first op session was something I fell into. I was attending a local convention at the time, and thinking about it, this was quite a few years ago. I can't even remember which convention it was, but it was held here in the South Bay area. And I wanted to go out and see some layouts. And there was a layout tour at a club here called the California Central. And the thing that was kind of unique about this particular club is it was housed in an original South Pacific Coast depot there out in the Agnews area on the outskirts of San Jose. So I thought, historic depot, layout to look at, I'm in. And I studied the South Pacific Coast, being local, railroad that always fascinated me. So I showed up, and what I didn't realize, I thought it was a layout tour. And I should have suspected something was up, because when I showed up, immediately ushered into a briefing session. Like, since when do you need to be briefed to look at a layout? You know how to use the eyes. And they started talking about the throttles, and he started talking about operating and how the trains work together, and train orders and timetable. Yeah, my first session was in a timetable and train order session.
Wow.
And they handed me a throttle and a clipboard and assigned me to a train. And just the fact that they gave me a throttle, I was still having a hard time getting over that, because that was amazing.
They really trusted you a lot.
I guess they did. They probably thought I was just part of a hardcore group of operators. But anyway, the whole concept of, running trains with a purpose. This is something that had always resonated with me. I had actually built a layout at that point in time. I was in HO. And my layout, while I really wasn't too cognizant of operations, I did think, okay, I got to have a reason to run a train from this point to that point. And so I was kind of putting like industries, there would be, okay, there's a lumber yard, and then there's a lumber sales point in this other town, and with a siding. So, there's a reason to run the train from there. The point is, I always kind of conceptualized model railroading not only as an artistic endeavor, building models, landscaping, scenery, but I also envisioned it as something with a purpose. And here I was actually living it out at the California Central Railroad. I'm not going to say I did really great. I'm sure I stabbed a passenger train or two.
But what does that mean? You're using terminology that might, people think you're actually stabbing.
We talked about that murder mystery. Remember?
You're right.
Yeah.
No, did not use a knife for this one.
Tom did it in the train room
With a knife.
With a knife.
With a knife. Not the candlestick.
Stabbing refers to me being in a place on the layout that I shouldn't have been at a particular time because a passenger train, which generally are regarded as high priority railroad movements on models as well as in real life. And, that's what the timetable is for. We can get into this a little later, but the timetable says at such and such a time, this passenger train will be occupying this area. Make sure you are not there or you're in a siding so that he can get around you. So the concept of stabbing is delaying or holding up a higher priority train. But I had a great time nonetheless. They were probably kinder than they should have been and actually invited me back. Although as much as I've operated since then, I don't think I've ever been back. But
Well, if you want to go back, you can go back in spirit by watching the video, because I have a layout tour of that video.
whoa,
Of that railroad, yeah.
Yeah, of that video. Did I say that video?
Yeah.
Thank you. Of that model railroad. And it's the California Central. It was one of the early layout tours that I did on this channel. It's a nice layout, actually.
might have been around the time I was operating.
It might have. Yeah. What about you, Charlie? What was your first?
Well, I was thinking about this just recently. In an odd coincidence, I started working at a company. The very first person I met on my very first day was a model railroader. Wouldn't you know it? And he introduced me. This was like Sparky, I'm Canadian, and this was in Ottawa. And there was a group called the Ottawa Valley Associated Railroaders, OVAR. And he said, yes, there's a train group. I went to a banquet. We had dinner, and he introduced me to some guys. And they said, why don't you come to an operating session?
Mm-hmm.
What's that? Well, come and find out. So I went and found out. And there were a couple of guys. I'm going to throw their names out simply because there could be a couple of people from Ottawa who might know these names. Robert Craig. There's actually a museum in Ottawa, Robert T. Craig Museum. Where that's Bob. Bob had a layout, and anyway, Bob was the guy that had the first op session. I went down his basement, and this was in Ottawa. This was an old basement stonework. I mean, I was like, what the hell's going on? I go down to this creaky, and there's a whole layout down here. And how we did things, this was, and I remember, it was 50 years ago.
Oh, geez.
1975 was my first op session. And there was a guy running a yard, and we had little tags. There were I-beam tags, from a curtain, and they were painted different colors and different stripes. And so what would happen is the yard master would put one of these little tags on top of the car, and it would tell you what the color would tell you the destination, and the stripe or the number would tell you what spot in, what siding or what spur. Off you went. DC control. You grabbed. They had to show me, here's where the cabs are. Here's how you set the blocks. Right. And you took it from A to B, and I had a blast. And I was hooked. That was it. That's all it took. One session, and I realized this is why I'm building models.
Mm.
I'm building models because they operate, and when you operate, there's this. I think we had 8 or 10 guys in that cramped little basement running his railroad, and and the first thing I thought of 50 years ago was this DCC control sucks. Surely there's got to be a better way to control, or DC control. Sorry,
Right.
DC control sucks. There's got to be a better way, and I started working with some hardware guys. How could we make this so that each locomotive could be controlled? And it took a few years, but eventually we've got DCC, and that's that's what it's. That's DCC was the godsend for ops, and so I've been hooked on it ever since.
Mhm.
Huh.
Sure. Running trains with a purpose.
Running trains with a
Yeah,
purpose.
I'm not sure I realized that people were doing, realistic ops that long ago.
Well, actually, the other guy's name was Joe Thomas, and Joe had this had a huge basement with a huge railroad. And what happened is we would operate at Bob's. At the end of the Bob's session, there was an interchange track because these were freelance railroads, although they were like Ontario Northland or whatever. They were kind of local, but so there'd be an interchange track. We'd box the cars up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next operating session was at Joe's.
Yeah.
There was an interchange track. We'd pop the cars out. That fed interchange cars on Joe's layout at the next operating session. And we swapped. This was in 1975, 76 that we were doing
That was the whole beyond the basement concept.
It was beyond there was no staging back then.
Yeah.
But we did, everything was run out of the yards.
Yeah.
But they were walk around, even though we had centralized throttles, you could kind of walk around. In fact, what we did at Joe's was we got to transistor throttles so that you could plug them in so you could actually walk.
Mhm.
And his layout was a walk around layout in 1975, 76. So a lot of guys were thinking about it and trying to understand, how to get realistic operations.
Yeah, they sound like pioneers, actually.
Yeah, well, they did.
Yeah.
They did good work, and that for me, I was a virgin, right? This was my first time, and I didn't know anything else.
Mhm.
But when I got hooked on it, we made fast clocks for them. I designed a fast clock so that you could change the ratio. The idea was if dispatcher got behind, you could slow the clock down.
It was a cheater.
It was
not
a cheater
fast clock.
clock.
It's a cheater
It was
clock.
a cheater clock.
Yeah.
But the point is, that got me going into all the ways to make operations more fun.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really cool. What about yours, Murph? You had a first op session, right?
Yeah, I did. I've been in model railroading twice in my life. Once was while I was a teenager, and I used to actually have a fairly decent collection back then because I'd get gift certificates for taking girls through ice dances because I was a figure skater, and there were very few males in figure skating, so they need somebody to take them through their dances. And I'd get gift certificates. But I'd go into the hobby shop and nobody wanted to have anything to do with me because I was a teenager.
Oh, right.
Because that was kind of the prevailing attitude back then. Fast forward through, having to be an adult for a while, and you have to be serious when you're an adult. Finally, in 2011, I learned how to play again.
Wait, you do?
Yeah, that's what they say.
This is news to me.
But at any rate, somewhere around 2009, 2010, I started making wine, and I had this whole basement with a whole bunch of wine barrels around, and I was thinking about it, going, there's a whole lot of room above these wine barrels. And that kind of started me thinking I'd really like to do trains. And I went over to the train shop, and I started looking around, and I heard about this thing called DCC. Now, I was like you. It was like, honestly, DC and block connections really kind of took the fun out of it. Yeah. And so I bought a DCC engine, but I only had a DC power pack. And so I went to work, and I was like, I know Dave Falkenberg does this train thing. So I called him up at the office, said, Dave, what do I need for a DCC system? And he set me straight. And he says, why don't you come down to SVL and see what it's all about? And so SVL was my first operating session. They gave me a throttle, and I started grinning, taking the train out and watching it go with me just with a radio throttle. And it was like, this is the way it should be.
Exactly.
Along with other things, also my first dispatching experience was during bay rails.
at
I was the
Silicon.
club dispatcher
Yeah.
for Bay Rails. It was like,
Wow.
here, you're in the hot seat. We're going to learn now.
Just
So,
throwing in the deep end.
yeah, a lot of fun over the years. And really, like you say, it's the people.
Well, I'm going to mention. So you've mentioned SVL a few times now,
Yeah.
and people who watch the channel a lot probably know that's Silicon Valley Lines. Actually, that's where I know you from, Murph. I think. Well, I'll back up. I met you at the SBHRS because you were at a Scale Trains presentation.
Right. Yeah.
But at that time, you were the president of Silicon Valley Lines.
yeah. Yeah.
And so that, I think, is how I got introduced to Silicon Valley Lines. And I was mentioning earlier, I couldn't remember for sure if my first op session was at SVL or if it was at the CMRS, which is the Carquinez Model Railroad Society up in Crockett, California. About 7 years ago, I had a chance to get into operations, and I think it was in Crockett. I don't know what led me to do that, except I had set up an email that went out to a whole bunch of people that was something to the effect of, I was working on a Model Railroading 101 program, which is a regular series on this channel. I haven't done one in quite some time, but I wanted to do a video about operations, and it was more of a series of videos about operations, because when I learned about ops, I was kind of like, oh, well, that makes sense. Of course, people would want to do something more than just run the trains in circles.
Right.
Because at least for me, now a lot of people like running trains in circles, and that's fine. You can, it's perfectly fine to enjoy the hobby however you want to. But for me, that gets boring after about the third time it goes around the circle, because it's the same train, it's the same cars, it's just going like this, around and around. And if you're at a big display type layout, like at SBHRS or something like that, there are a bunch of different places you can go to see that same train going in different scenes. So that can be okay. But to me, it's just like, I lose interest. So I was like, this operations thing sounds kind of cool. And I believe it was at Crockett, because I made a video that what ended up happening was the Model Railroading 101 operations video turned into a series of videos. Because as I learned more about operations, I learned that there were different ways of dispatching and that can change based on the era even. It can change based on a lot of things. So the video I did up at Crockett was one of the first ones, and I don't remember which dispatching we were talking about for that one, but you can find it on this channel. It's Model Railroad Operations at CMRS or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. I didn't realize that I'd be talking about this today, or else I would have put a link in the video already. Now that I have talked about it, I'll put a put a link of that video in the description below when I have a chance to after this. So if you're watching on the replay, you can look it up. But I remember going to it and thinking, I'd never operated. Other than just a DC thing when I was a kid, I'd never really operated. I had seen it because I was doing videos before that with someone who was into DCC and all that. So I had seen it, but never really done it. And so I was kind of like, not nervous, but just kind of what's going to happen, because I know how the thing works. I know this makes it go forward and this makes it go backwards, and I knew that kind of stuff. And you push this for the horn or whatever, because it's a DCC operation there, obviously. But then they handed me all these car cards, and I didn't know what that was. Now, the car cards at CMRS have pictures of the cars on them. That's something that I thought was pretty cool, because it's like you can see what it's supposed to look like, and so you're looking at the train, you're like, oh yeah, that's that car. The color's a little different because maybe the printer was low on ink when they did the card. I don't know, but you can tell what it is.
Right.
And luckily, I had my friend Marty, whom I had met like within the, a year or two before that, to go around with me and kind of hold my hand through the process. And I started to understand it. Like, oh, well, this is kind of cool. And so now I think I'm trying to remember now, but I think that really is what got me more interested. After that, I'm sure I went to Silicon Valley Lines. That was one of my early op sessions. And, to be honest, I'm not even sure how many layouts I've operated on now.
Well, so before your first one, did you know had you heard the term operations or ops before, and did you have expectations about what it was or wasn't?
Yeah, I had heard about it because I had been talking to people like our friend Seth Newman.
Right.
And, among others, but Seth was one of the original people that sort of walked me through it. As a matter of fact, I have a whole video, Introduction to Operations, with Seth Newman on this channel. And I learned a lot just talking. One of the things people have to understand is when you do as many videos as I do on this channel, there's like over 2,000 videos on this channel. It's hard for me to even imagine that that's true, but it is. But when you do that much stuff, you have to learn from other people, or you have to get experts in stuff to explain things to you, right? Because you can't be an expert on everything. So I learned a lot from Seth, and so I did have some basic understanding of what it was and how it works. I just hadn't done it before.
But the other thing is kind of more pertaining to the whole fun aspect. Meeting more people and understanding all of their expertise and actually interacting with them is part of the fun of the hobby.
Oh, absolutely.
If you go to somebody's house and you're all afraid that, you're doing their op session and you might insult them with doing something wrong or anything like that, understand, first of all, that person is probably the most under stress of anybody that's there.
Oh, yeah.
But there are going to be probably 4 or 5 other people that are the veterans that will shepherd you through it, and you'll have a good time, and you'll be laughing with the layout owner sooner than later, and it's all good. It's really the community that makes it. One of the things that really impressed me, I had a friend visit me from New York that used to be a member of SVL. And he came out, and he left like 2 or 3 years ago, and on Friday night we went to SVL and we worked on the layout, and he got to see everybody that he knew there. On Saturday we were at Fortin's house, and we got to meet everybody again at Fortin's house, and also a lot of people that were at Dave Parks's layout too, because Dakota used to work at Parks's house a lot. Yeah. And then on Sunday, Dakota helped me work on my layout, and he just goes, "This was the perfect weekend. This was everything I wanted, and to be able to meet all the community again, or as much of the community as I could hope for back in this area." And it's the lasting friendships that you get out of this that really matter.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Really true.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wanted to mention that it was 50 years ago that I started operating, because I still am in touch with some of those people. Now, I don't operate obviously anymore with them, but we're still friends after 50 years, right?
Sure.
And that was the fun part of operating, was I was learning stuff. A lot of these guys were experts at certain things. I was learning about things, but mostly, one of the guys took me under his wing, became a mentor, and was teaching me stuff. And not only did I enjoy the operations, but the best part was the whole community of railroaders.
I was actually trying to explain just kind of briefly what op sessions are, and to someone who doesn't know anything about it. And I made that observation about running in circles, and how when you're a kid with a DC train set, that's what you do. You don't know any different, right?
Yeah.
But
other than putting things on the tracks.
Sure. And hoping they right. Yeah. Putting the Hot Wheels on the tracks.
Yeah.
And, oh, that's a crash, But what I was thinking as I was trying to describe this to him was, what are you really doing? And the answer to the question is multiple things. One is you are trying to operate a model railroad in a manner that is as much like the real thing, the prototypes, the one-to-one models, if you will, as much like that as possible. And again, it may vary by layout, how that works. And I was trying to explain, like again, I'm going to refer back to Seth's layout. It's Union Pacific in 1999. Okay. And it covers Milpitas, Fremont, and Pleasanton, basically. So he has the industries, and he has, the correct rolling stock and the correct locomotive, what would be there. in 1999, and he operates by Union Pacific rules that were in place in that. So I was trying to explain this. It's like, so you're not just moving a boxcar from here to there. You're taking a boxcar of auto parts and delivering it to the auto plant, and then you're taking the finished cars in an auto rack to wherever their destiny. You see what I'm saying? Like trying to explain that specific detail. But at the end of my description of explaining what it was, I said, it's really an excuse to hang out because, right? Because these are all people that I like,
Yeah.
a lot. This is you guys, right? We're going to op sessions together because we like to hang out.
Mhm.
And I told them, there's almost always donuts in the beginning, which is a great reason to wake up for me.
selling point.
Right?
What is it? An obsession is an excuse to go to get donuts? Is that what you're saying?
It's an excuse to eat a donut. Yes.
So I would say, though, Sparky brings up an interesting thing. He likes to watch the trains go. And
Yes.
honestly, sometimes when I'm dispatching for SVL, I often dispatch at home.
Mhm.
And we have cameras on front of the trains. We also have my favorite, which is the Chaos Cam. We have a portion of the layout at SVL that is called Chaos. It's got interchange with a certain railroad, another one going up to the Helix, going up to Nauer's Yard, another one's going back around to Jacksonville, and one lead that just goes off to Jasper, which is another staging yard. And sometimes when there aren't too many trains staged, it's kind of nice to kick back with my glass of wine because I am at home. And I'll just sit and watch the Chaos Cam as the trains go by. Life is good. So, yeah, get your enjoyment the way you can.
So I saw a question flash up earlier.
Yeah. Which one was it?
Well, a new guy says, what is an op session? And other than the answer, which I thought was a good one, which is it's a chance to run trains while eating donuts. But the second answer is something that we addressed in our clinic.
Mhm.
And we'll get a chance to do that hopefully in the future here. But fundamentally, we talked about this, but it's a simulation game. We're simulating the operation of a railroad.
Mhm.
And the thing about that, like with any simulation, is you can decide for yourself, if it's your railroad, you can decide how much of the simulation you want to be, how realistic you want it to be.
Mhm.
If you're an operator, you can, as you try different layouts, you can, prefer going to layouts that have the level of simulation that you
Right.
want.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Like, yeah.
But you don't have to questions like, do I need car cards? Do I need switches? No. You can simulate that. In our clinic, we talk about the different roles that a real railroad has, and then you can decide what subset of that you want to replicate,
Right.
or what jobs sound interesting to you.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
And just work on those jobs if you like to do that, right? With as much and have as much fun as you can in the simulation.
So I will tell you that Keith is providing leading questions.
Yeah. What's an op session, Murph?
Yeah. He was operating at SVL, I think it was 2 months ago.
Uh-huh.
So he knows this stuff.
So he's
But
just
I think
teasing
what he
us.
was getting at is we kept talking about op sessions without actually even saying operating sessions. So it's defining, and I think he did a great job defining the term.
Okay.
But it's a good leading question. And he came up with another one somewhere in there about why is this not just
A 3D
a 3D
board game.
board game? And I think that's actually applicable to me. I always compare doing an op session to sort of like Dungeons and Dragons. You are role playing. You're role playing your particular positions on the railroad.
Mhm.
I would love to hear an argument against it or something that sets it apart from it. But to me, it is very similar.
Although to something that sets it apart. So as I mentioned, you can simulate as much or as little as you want. But I will tell you about an operating session I attended about 6 months ago. It was in Phoenix.
Okay.
Okay. And the locomotives, DCC with power, and they were run with a proto throttle. So for those who don't know, a proto throttle is basically a handheld device that simulates a real cab in a diesel.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you accelerate, you use the run lever to accelerate it, and you can hear the locomotive, and it's not moving because it has inertia. So it simulates the inertia, and that part's okay. So now you've got a train going, and you've got 3 cars, and you're backing up, and you want to spot that puppy right in front of the team track in front of the house, you shut off the throttle and it keeps going.
Yep.
You got to work the brakes. So what I found thoroughly enjoyable was simulating the role of an engineer using a device that allowed me to simulate as realistically as possible what it's like to actually try to move a multi-ton train around, put cars where they're supposed to be, pick up cars without smashing them to pieces.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and you know, you may or may not like that, but it's just one slice of the game that I found thoroughly enjoyable and challenging.
As long as the owner isn't a little too hepped up on the momentum thing. I mean, a switcher has surely got to have a different momentum profile than a couple, SD70s.
Yes. Well, now I'm a weird electronics guy. I want the DCC controller to actually use the back EMF to determine how many cars it's pulling and change the momentum on the fly.
See, now we're getting into the real fun aspects.
No.
Yeah.
We're scaring everybody off.
Kind of
So,
getting over my pay grade.
Yeah. But like I said, you can go as deep as you want.
And now there's not a thing that Heath is saying that I could agree with, so that's fine.
He's really tried to get us in trouble with this one.
Yeah.
Why did Oh my gosh.
Heath, you got to remember when Murph's out here, you got to say, why is it that Alcos are so much better than EMDs? That'll just really get under my skin.
It's the smoke.
How about Alcos being controlled with a Digitrax controller?
Ooh. Now we're scaring everybody off.
No, but seriously, I think that there's something to that whole idea of having as much or as little detail.
Exactly.
Because, like, for example, there was an op session that I've been, well, actually, there's been a couple op sessions that I've been to that were really paperwork heavy. And I find myself going, I don't like paperwork. Like, this is something that you compress out of to me, this is something you compress out of your model railroad. Great example. We go operate at Dave's quite frequently, and there's no paperwork. You don't have to, you have car cards, right, in a little pouch, and then you have the clipboard, and it has directions taped on the back of the clipboard. There's no excess. I'm just going to call it crap to deal with. You're not having to drop all your papers on the floor. Then you got to pick it all up, unless you drop the car cards, of course. But
I really like Rick Thornton's use of car cards and scheme for doing it. At the same time, I can't imagine using it at SVL. Mostly because of we want to rotate all of the 1,000 cars into the operating sections every 6 months, blah, blah, blah thing, which would be just a nightmare.
But for people that want to start exploring operations at a very basic, simple, rudimentary level, operations can really be as simple as we use the term like for like.
Right.
You grab a couple of cars in a yard, maybe a box car and a hopper. You drive off to a town. And in the town, you see on a siding a boxcar and a hopper, and you just simply swap the cars. Part of the appeal of that, which is what we refer to as switching. Well, I always put it this way when I talk with people. Anybody that's interested in puzzles, particularly Tetris, can have a great time switching, because, like, without picking up my locomotive and cars with my hands, how do I negotiate the trackage that's in this particular area so that I can pull that car and then place this car that I brought up here? And while I have the floor for just a minute, I want to circle back really quickly to the social aspect of the hobby. The reason I want to mention this is because when I started modeling, I was the quintessential lone wolf modeler. I sat in my studio and I would build models, and I built a very rudimentary layout. It did have a loop, but again, because I knew from early on trains had to have a purpose, there was a branch line off of this loop going to a little town to do some switching. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then when I discovered operations at that session, and then hooked up with Dave Lovelace, which we can talk more how that happened when the three of us get together. But all of a sudden, I began to discover another world in my life. I don't know if anybody's a Seinfeld fan. George Costanza had his different worlds. Worlds are colliding. So I have my various worlds. Model railroading is a very big, important world in my life, and the friendship, social aspect is something I cherish and helps sustain me a lot, both in modeling and also just in doing life.
So we've been talking a lot about operating and being operators, but one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is you may have a railroad, you may never have operated, you might be thinking of operating, but I've just got a little railroad in my bedroom or a little couple of shelves in my garage or whatever. Does ops make sense for a small layout, or do I have to have a shed and that's
Right, yeah,
or
dedicated
full
full basement?
empire.
And the answer is you can operate with a crew of 2 people.
Yeah.
And on small layouts. Your layout now, your ON30 layout, which I think, have you talked about here before? I don't know.
I don't think we've ever talked about Tom's layout.
But it's a wonderful little layout.
We'll have to do a layout video of it someday.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna do a layout
It's
tour
a it's
that way.
it's a wonderful little it's O scale, so it's big, but ON30 narrow gauge railroad, which is what 4 guys operate. I think 3.
It's designed for 3, but I discovered recently I can operate it effectively with 4.
Exactly. And it's a really fun railroad to operate. So you don't have to have an extravaganza to have a good ops.
But it's 4 operators, all right? It's not 3 operators and 1 guy just laughing at everybody.
No, it's 4 operators
Okay.
and me laughing at everybody.
Oh, so it's 5 then. 5 people are entertained for an hour.
Actually,
Exactly.
Actually, the fun part is even a small layout is not an hour, right? It
can be a lot more than that.
That Tetris puzzle of figuring out where to move things, and it's more, to me, it's more because of the physical nature of the cars. You're physically moving something, especially if you've got sound. You're throwing switches mechanically. You're doing things.
Yeah.
It's got a lot more tactile feedback than just a board game.
Yeah, and if you have more than one person, you've still got a bit of a dance going on,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
what makes it challenging. One of my favorite layouts was Bill Goodenough's when he lived here in San
Oh,
Jose.
yeah, I remember that one.
He had space for 2 operators, and somebody could watch if they opened up the bedroom window. And his buildings were gorgeous. And
Yeah,
his
really.
track plan was really nice. It made for interesting switching operations. But in general, if you were on one side, you had to wait until the train that was switching the other side moved up to a certain spot before you could move forward. So you're constantly kind of keeping track of it all.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
It's the dance.
Yes.
Well, and that
Very
also
simple.
kind of underscores the whole point that you don't need to have a huge,
Right.
basement empire of,
Correct.
the same size as your house. Now, can you have more people over, which might mean more fun? Sure, but it's a whole lot more work too. Getting large layouts built can be quite a challenge,
Built, setting up, and maintaining.
right? No, but it depends also on the design, right? Because, like, for example, Dave's layout that we operate on all the time, who couldn't make it today, it resets itself. So
Yeah.
it's one of, if not the most ingenious designs I've ever seen. And I've seen a few layouts, doing what I do. It's self-staging, self-resetting. Other than just making minor repairs or adding scenery or whatever, he doesn't have to do much.
Well, what's interesting about it is you can, people have asked, do I need switch lists? Do I need cars? Do I need waybills? Those are part of the simulation that says, how do I manage the movement of cars, right? There are different ways of doing it.
Right.
And with Dave's layout, you can do like for like with no paperwork, right?
Okay.
You can use car cards.
Uh-huh.
We can move to timetable and train order if we want to use timetable and train order and learn that all that paperwork,
Right.
all in the same railroad.
Yeah, but we've done track parts too.
And we've done track points. Yep.
So,
Yeah, track
but
points, yeah.
I have to say though, out of all the different types of, or all the different approaches for that, I always appreciate what he refers to as visual
VFR.
flight.
Visual
flight
flight
rules.
rules.
Yeah, visual flight rules where you're not having to deal with a dispatcher and a bunch of, the timetable and all that stuff. You just look, is there a train coming? No. Okay. Or, hey, I'm going to be coming pretty soon. Make sure the main's clear down there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be coming through, or I would like to come through. Can you clear the main? You know, however you want to put it.
Yep.
And to me, that concentrates all the part that I like, which is the actual doing the puzzle stuff.
Yeah, moving trains and solving the puzzle.
Exactly. And that was one of the things I mentioned when I was trying to explain what ops are, right? To the person I was talking to, was that whole thing about, you know, you have to move stuff. And I used the facing point switch as an example. I didn't call it facing point, facing point setup.
Right.
I didn't call it that because he doesn't know what that is. But I said, if you're pulling a train behind you and you need to set a car out that's behind you in front of you, how do you get it there?
Right.
It's that kind of stuff that you're trying to, without picking it up, and just putting it over there, because, a real railroad can't just pick up a car and put it over there unless they have cranes everywhere, and they don't.
Yeah.
Right. So, and even then it would be a pain because they would come off the
horrifically
trucks.
expensive. Yes.
All of the above. Yeah.
One thing, Heath also asked, what's the best way to clean track? Whatever layout you go to and it runs flawlessly,
That's it.
that guy.
That's the answer. Yeah.
Honestly, in my experience, Rick Fortin's layout, I've never had a train go dead anywhere. And so whatever his formula is, I would love to know.
Well, one of the formulas, as I've heard, like Dave's, is just keep running operating sessions. So there's nothing that keeps the track clean and running got to keep the wheels clean on the locomotives and the cars too,
Right.
but you run a lot of trains, you keep the track clean.
Yep. And if you want to have fun, that's what you provide for your people.
Yeah.
That run.
Well, that kind of brings up a whole different aspect to this, which is it's only fun if it works.
Yeah.
So imagine going to your first ever op session and having nothing but trouble with the physical, mechanical
Infrastructure,
aspects of the layout and the equipment and all of the above. So that could actually scare people away from ops. They'll say, well, I went and it sucked. I don't know why everybody likes this so much. The train kept coming off the track. Nothing worked. It's all this stuff. Nothing but problems, It's like, unless you enjoy solving problems that way.
But if you do have that problem, take some time to write down the problems on a sheet so that people can work on it and make it better.
Mm-hmm.
I always make bad orders when I notice things that are fixable.
Mm-hmm.
Because it helps the layout owner and it helps your host.
Well,
And as a good guest, you should always help your host.
I think you're bringing up something, Murph, that we should probably talk about a little bit, which is what are your responsibilities, if you want to put it that way, as a visitor, right? As an operator on someone's layout. And that could be a lot of things. It could be, this could touch on things like, etiquette. How can you be a good guest? I think what you're saying, Murph, is a really good, example of things to do. If this coupler falls off of the rolling stock, don't just, hide it or whatever. Tell them, look, this came off and you might want to fix that. Or if you're having trouble with a turnout, and it happens all the time and it happens with all the equipment, it's like, there might be something, tell them there might be something wrong with this turnout because it derailed, every car derailed, the locomotive derailed, and maybe there's something going on there you might want to look at. Here's one. If you break something by accident, tell the person, because the last thing they want to do is find something broken and not know it was like that.
Yeah.
And then find out it's been like that for, 4 or 5 sessions. It's like, well, I would have fixed that if I'd known it was broken.
Accidents happen. It's fine to just fess up and say, hey, this happened. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. We have a watering tower at SVL. It's at the top of the loop. And Bill had made this. And he came in one day and the spout's laying down on the tracks. And he's like, what is this? You don't have enough respect for me to let me know that this happened?
Mm-hmm.
It's very upsetting. So, again, be kind to your host. Just let them know it's fixable. Everything is gluable one way or the other, or duct tapeable. It can all be done.
Well, someone said that to me one time, and I think it might have been Dave Loveless, who said, don't worry, if something happens, everything can be fixed. I built it, I can fix it, or something to that effect. And as a new person, right, a new operator, relatively new, I was like, oh, well, that made me feel a lot better. Sydney's And Sydney's putting up here, shower, brush your teeth, use deodorant. Yes. I mean, I've been in op sessions and certain people have just had the horrible BO and you're just like, dude, really? Did you not realize you were going to be?
I've been
group of
at D&D
people?
conventions
Close
for the
quarters
same
with a
thing.
group of people.
Yeah, I mean, and inevitably it's always at the pinch point at the layout or the narrowest point of the layout where you have to go by them
Mhm.
and you're hoping that the smell didn't rub off on you.
Yeah.
How gross is that?
It's a little too social, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, well, I mean, or a way to get people to not like you anymore. It's like, I don't even care if there's donuts. I don't want to smell that guy again, you know?
The truth is about breakage, most layout owners will assume a level of breakage.
Oh, yeah.
So their first go-to is not going to be mad. Their
Yeah.
first go-to is, thank you for letting me know.
Yep,
I appreciate you for letting me know.
yep.
And I'll put it on what we refer to as the bad order list,
Uh-huh.
and I'll get it fixed.
And then chances are the next time you're there, you'll see that and it'll be working.
Yeah.
In
Right.
fact, most layout owners, we talked about this in our clinic, that most layout owners are the mechanical department for the railroad,
Yep.
That's right.
Uh, right?
Yep.
The layout owners are not running trains, they're not dispatching, they're not running the yard.
Not
They're
usually.
they're running around fixing things that may come up.
Or in
just
some
case.
cases, they're the project managers and they have a team of.
That happens.
We
too.
know a few of those around
Yeah,
this
yeah,
area,
yeah,
don't we? Actually, that's part of the fun part.
Yes.
You get people coming in from the various industries where they actually were a project manager. And these folks know how to get people organized and put the best people on whatever job and get mentorships into position. It's amazing. Seth is great at that,
Mhm.
among others. So,
Yep.
So I'm going to, since there's a lull here, we were talking earlier about paperwork.
Uh-huh.
And I always assumed I hated paperwork, that it just gets in the way.
Uh-huh.
So about a month ago, and Tommy was my engineer, we
That's right.
went to Paul Weiss's Central Vermont Railroad
Uh-huh.
up in
Right.
Nevada. Fantastic railroad. And he is trying to simulate a railroad from the 50s
right.
to as much detail as you can.
Mhm.
And so I was the conductor, and when he handed me the job of the conductor on this one train, there were a couple of things that I thought were interesting. He handed me a ton of paper. I won't give you the whole list, but lots of paper, right? And then he said, "You're going to switch towns A, B, C, and then return home." I thought, great, we'll be done in a couple hours. He said, "This will take you all day," and I thought, no, it's not going to take all day.
Took all day.
Well, and we didn't finish the job.
We didn't.
we
didn't even get to the
didn't
third
We
town.
didn't even get to the third town.
That, yes.
But what surprised me was he simulated the conductor's job, right, to almost duplicate all the steps a real conductor would have to do. And I found myself with all this paperwork as if I was a conductor sitting in the caboose. I had switch lists to prepare. I had way bills. I had empty cars to deliver. I had to decide, what do I pick up on my way out? What do I pick up on the way back? How do I instruct the engine? The cars that I have to move, how do I make sure they get put back where they were, where I
Right.
found them?
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And all of a sudden, it was just a wide opening for me. I had never simulated. I mean, I've done conductor jobs before. They're
Right.
pretty, but this time, I was really doing a conductor's job.
Right.
And so again, as I mentioned earlier, I had fun trying to be like a real engineer with the momentum and the throttle.
right.
Trying to be a real conductor was a real challenge. Not for everybody,
Right.
but I was surprised how much I enjoyed the paperwork.
Huh.
And I'm happy to go back and try that damn job again, because now that
I did that same job at Paul's Layout.
yes,
Is that the one where you have to sit down for a half hour
yes,
before you even get your
yes,
call?
because
to
you've got to
out?
prepare
That's
your
right.
switch list.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I remember when we did, it was funny. I was operating with another friend, actually another TSG train crew member. Well, he wasn't at the time, but he became one. And I remember it's someone who actually worked for a railroad.
Yes.
And I got the description of the job, and I'm looking at, and it's a 2-person crew, as you know. And I'm looking at him going, "You worked for the real railroad, right?" Because I was pawning that job off on him because I didn't want to do it. It's like, oh, I don't want to make switch lists before I even see where I'm going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, like it's like, maybe you should give me a switch list so that it's done. So yeah, that was a real challenge.
Yes.
And yeah, it's some turn. I can't remember the name of the
It's
job.
the first something town turn, whatever. But
Is it Montford?
Montford,
Something?
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, I don't want to scare people off who've never operated before. One of the things we try to say in our clinic is, if you're a novice operator and you're invited to a TT and TO session, either turn it down, because I don't want you to have a miserable time, or make sure well ahead of time that you're going to be tagging along with someone who knows what's going on, because it can be overwhelming. On the other hand, for someone like me who enjoys the detail, I was surprised how much fun it was to actually get into the. And I realized I wanted a whole caboose. I wanted a desk. I wanted places to file papers. Because it was that much work.
You're holding on to it all.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. So for switching jobs, because I think over the road jobs really are soloable. For switching jobs, I don't know about you guys, I prefer 2-man teams. How about you?
I love 2-man teams. Always have. Here's the thing. I've always enjoyed movies that involve teams of people getting a job done. Mission Impossible is my gold standard, right?
Right.
You have all these different guys. Each one is sort of an expert in his field. My profession is music. I play music, and I tend to specialize in music with bands, groups, orchestras, ensembles. And it's exactly the same thing. Everyone's a specialist, but yet we're all working together to accomplish a thing. And that exact same thought process translates perfectly into model railroading. So working as a team, I worked with Charlie. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Frankly, I admit I enjoyed the fact that I was the engineer and he was the conductor.
That was my experience when I was there too. Yeah.
But I was looking over his shoulder the whole time, and I thought, no, Crunch, I could do this. And then my last op session just a couple weeks ago over at Guy Cantwell's, I also worked as a team.
Yeah.
I had a ball working there. Again, great people, and that's my take on teamwork.
Yeah. I've done 2-man teams with people that really don't have the dexterity to handle all the paperwork that you have to shuffle when you're basically being a conductor / brakeman. The one that really kind of crystallized it for me, though, was back on Ray's old layout, where you could have a train 25 feet long, and if you have a brakeman, it's a relatively easy job as long as you're using some hand signals or you yell loud enough, that kind of thing. But if you are one-manning that thing, you're getting one heck of a lot of walking done.
Yeah, you should mention
scale.
You should mention that Ray's Railroad is an outdoor
G-scale layout that is built for operating.
Right.
And it's really, I was so impressed with it, because my general attitude about G-scale layouts is, we go round and round, we watch, because I've seen a lot of garden layouts that really are, they just need a Christmas tree in the middle.
Beautiful landscape. Give credit where credit's due.
Ray's, you had jobs, and those
And
jobs,
you went a distance.
Yes, exactly. And man, 2-man crews there, it's the only way to go.
Because you're far away from your brakeman.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's handy in some layouts that are congested to have your brakeman down doing the switching when you don't need to walk by 3 people to get to the end of your train. I say that being my size, which is always an effort. But yeah.
But you're a figure skater, so you're a slim fellow.
I know I'm agile.
Yes,
There's
and
a
quick.
Flexible.
Yes.
And quick
I'm
over short.
I'm amazed sometimes how skinny people can make themselves so damn wide.
That sounds like a bumper sticker. But I had some great insight that I was going to offer, and I forgot what it was now. Oh, I know what it was. The other, I think, real advantage to the 2-person crew is that you pair someone new with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Too.
And right, because the engineer job is, well, it's what I call, people walk by and give me crap at an op session because we're having some trouble with something, and I'll look over at them, say, "Don't talk to me. I'm just the monkey. I push buttons, because I'm the engineer." And it's like giving grief back, of course, which is always fun. You have to do that. But if you have someone who knows what they're doing, it's a lot easier. Let me put it this way. It's a lot easier, I think, to wrangle the direction and speed of the train than it is to figure out where to put stuff and which one should go first and how to get that car that's behind the train into the
right position. Yeah.
into the right position that's in front of the train, all that stuff. And as the engineer, if you have a good second person on the crew, they'll explain to you, like, well, this is why we're going to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do for someone who's new.
Right.
It's like we have to put the locomotive over here so that it can go around the train and push that car into that, because otherwise, how are we going to get it? It's behind the train.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Explaining a runaround, right, for anyone who doesn't get it. So I do think that's a really big advantage. I know that being what I'm going to call being thrown into the deep end, which is, and I was kind of afraid of this when I would go to open houses or go, because my idea when I was trying to make these videos that I alluded to earlier about operations was I'd like to come and observe. Let me come and see what everyone's doing and maybe just have someone explain it to me. And people would always say that, oh, he's going to put a throttle in your hand. He's going to put a throttle in your hand. And I was kind of like, well, I don't want a throttle in my hand. I just want to look. I just want to see what's going on. And when I understand it, then I'll do it. And in a related sort of side note to this whole, approaching people asking for advice or asking for information about, operations, one of the people that I sent an email to wrote back to, because I sent an email out saying to about maybe 20 or 25 people saying, I want to do a video about model railroad operations, but I don't know enough about it to present like authoritatively what it is and how it works and all that. And are you interested in helping? Can you help? If there's something about it, you might have actually got this email, Murph. I don't remember if I sent it to you or not, but
No.
I got one person who responded to me who said, well, what you really need to do is start operating, and then in 5 years you can make your video. And I'm like, dude, no, I couldn't believe it. But he was trying to be helpful. And now that I've been operating for well over 5 years, I get it. I get what he was trying to say, because I can explain a whole lot more now than I could back then, because I actually have done it.
But it's a 101.
It's a 101, yeah.
And everybody starts with a 101.
Yeah.
Nobody starts with 5 years in.
Yeah, that's 201.
And honestly, it's part of what I really enjoy about being the conductor on a two-person team. It gives me, I can basically just say, okay, you want to go grab that, and you can start thinking the moves ahead, which makes you a better switcher.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to go, pull all three of these cars because we want to be able to put that over there,
Exactly.
and there. And then we're going to have a short enough train to be able to run around the train in order to do these facing point shoves. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's what makes it, that's when it clicks and you're going, I understand how to solve the puzzle.
Right. And that's what the challenge is. If you like the challenge of a puzzle.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've got to say is we've operated, between you and I, what did Dave say? We've got about 150 or 200 operating sessions between the two of us.
Yeah, about that. About 200.
So we should be pretty damn bored by now, right? Because we have operated that railroad dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and the cars are basically the same. So why aren't we bored? And the answer is because even though it's like, a game of chess, the pieces don't change, but the strategies are always different. Right. And so every time you switch, it's a different challenge.
Right. It's a different challenge. And also every once in a while you go, wait a minute, there's a little bit easier way for this. It's kind of like at Rick's this last time. I was like, I'm going to need a caboose for this. So as I'm breezing by the caboose staging tracks, I just grab one, pull it out, put it in my string, park my thing, shove the caboose down on one track. Yeah, and we're going to be ready to go. Mostly I've learned that from listening to Mark Schutzer, because he's always thinking ahead like that. And that's what. But the thing is, too, I found it to be a real challenge as I'm getting older to make sure that I'm keeping my short-term storage of sequences of operations fresh, and so I can actually exercise doing it that way. It's an important skill to maintain, I think, as you get older. If you don't exercise it, you're going to lose it.
Well,
That's very true.
yeah, I was just going to add to that. So our hot thing, my hot thing is getting young people, because I started when I was in my 20s, right? But I would like to, I'd like to get young people in, but something to know. We talk about the camaraderie. As I've noticed I'm getting older.
Yeah.
and apparently that's a trend. Apparently it's not going to be
I keep
reversed.
trying to stop it.
And so, so two things about ops. There's lots of studies that show that social connection, having a community that you're participating in, that you're active in, is good for your mental health, your overall physical well-being.
Yeah.
Basically, model railroaders live longer, because of the community. And the other thing is what you're saying is the puzzles.
Yes.
Keep your brain sharp, because just like any other, well, it's not a muscle, but you don't want your brain to atrophy. And the puzzles are always challenging, and they're keeping your brain active all the time.
Yeah. And it keeps you able to focus at times. It's like I was relating during lunch that Mark had given me like 5 different things he wanted me to do, and I'm like keeping this. I'm like saying a mantra. Someone comes up to me. Do you know what's supposed to be happening with this train? And I just turn around and went, you're asking me a question. I don't do questions. You need to talk to Mark. And I was kind of like, man, Mark triggered my spectrum. What is going on here? But it's like, yeah, it's really good to be able to focus like that.
So something I want to mention, and I want to discuss this question that
Yeah,
came up.
that's a good question.
I'm going to leave it on the screen so we don't forget to talk
Yes.
about it. But I do want to mention one of the really, I think, rewarding, I guess that's the way to put it, things about being able to go back and operate on the same layout repeatedly like Dave's, for me, is I'll do a job for the first time, and then later that day when I go home and have time to think about it, I think, I wonder if I had done it this way. And then the next time I go back, I'll try to get that same job so I can try what I thought of.
Right.
Because
Improve.
right. Now, and think about this. In real life, railroaders are on a job and they do it every day or every week. We'll put it that way, because not every job is done every day, but every week they have the same routine. They know all the tricks because they've done it countless times. You're showing up to an op session for the first time and doing a job for the first time. And if it's a freelance model railroad, it's even harder because you don't know the names of places. Like, how are you supposed to know that Macy is east of Dunville or, whatever, these made up names? If it's a prototype specific, that Monterey is here in relation to Santa Cruz, or, whatever the
geography says,
whatever the actual geography says. So there are a lot of things that can really throw a wrench into your first time experience at a place. And that's something else I think for new operators to think about is I don't think anybody expects someone showing up for the first time to be perfect anyway.
Right.
So it's okay to have questions and it's okay to mess things up. Just don't be a jerk while you're there doing it. And it can be easy to get frustrated. One of the things I've had to sort of grapple with was I'm very task oriented, right? I have lists for everything. I have a list for all the videos that I have to edit between now and whenever, to get them done. And that way I don't forget what I have to do. And 2, it feels good to cross it off, cross things off the list.
Sense of accomplishment,
I guess, right? And now where was I going with that? Oh, I'm task oriented. So I'm like, put pressure on myself to finish the job. I remember one time to explain this, at the end of Dave's session, he says, okay, the power's going off in 3 minutes. And the power's going off in 3 minutes, whether you're done or not, because the next session can start where it was left off. That's how ingenious his layout is, the design of his layout. And so he turned off the power, and I'm like, I'm not done yet. I'm not back. Well, meanwhile, Mark is like, hey, I need my locomotive. I'm like, I just want to do one more move. I just want to get it over to the side, whatever it was. And I'm like trying to move stuff with wanting to move stuff with my hand. And I'm like, I got to stop this. Like, it doesn't matter if you finish. It doesn't matter if you mess up something. It doesn't matter even if you break. Don't drop a brass locomotive on the floor.
Oh.
That's the one caveat I'll add to this comment.
That might matter.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you break something, a little sign on the road or a switch stand or something that can be fixed. My point is, you're there to have fun. And if you're stressing yourself out like I did on some of these early sessions that I did, it's not as fun. I mean, I'd have someone come up to me and ask me a question, and I'd be snippy because I'm just like, I'm trying to get this done, like, let me finish. I just want to finish this move. I'm bringing the train through. Can you make sure the main is clear? No, I got to finish this move. I'm just being a jerk. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit just to make the point. But since I came to this realization one day after getting the power shut off, I'm just like, I don't care. I'm just having fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you have that, and hanging around with you guys, right? If you have that kind of an attitude toward the thing, I mean, the railroad's not going to lose money if you don't finish your job. The customers aren't going to be mad because they didn't get what was being delivered, because all those little model cars, they don't have anything in them, it's just fake, So just have fun with it. Anyway, we have to talk about this.
Yeah. Before we run out of time,
Yeah.
we got to talk to that.
Yeah, advice for someone looking to find operating sessions, and I'll let you guys go because I just talked for 5 minutes.
Well, I saw that someone posted. Unfortunately, I don't know how well it's working. There's operatingsessions.com, I think is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I signed up for that just to see about getting more operating sessions, but not a lot of layout owners. It doesn't seem to be working yet. Maybe it will. But I would think that, I got invited to my first operating session because I went to a club or an event and met some people.
Right.
And then when I moved to the U.S., I went to like an LD. I was telling Tommy about this. I went to this LD OPSIG because I decided I wanted to re-engage. And I met somebody, a wonderful guy named Chuck Catania.
Yeah.
Right. Who introduced me to Dave Lovelace and these guys. And, I was back into an operating groove again.
Yeah.
So, there are, if you're involved in the hobby, if you're a lone wolf, it's a little harder. But if you don't want to be a lone wolf, keep an eye out for things like podcasts and meet some people.
Yeah.
Go to an event. Go to an open house.
Yeah.
And find out if that operator or that owner operates.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever met a guy operating a railroad who was not interested in meeting a new potential operator.
Again, for me, my first contact was Dave Falkenberg,
Oh, yeah.
asking about a throttle, and then we met and we had a little talk about what clubs were in the area. He stressed that SVL was an operating club,
Which does matter.
That was what mattered to me. There are clubs that are really there to be displays.
Sure.
There are clubs that simply want to have members that run trains round and round, which wasn't me, which is fine. And that was kind of like the beginning. And I met at SVL, I've met a lot of other people that enjoyed operating. I got involved in various lunches in the area because of that, so I think that's where I met you. Where I met Ray at SVL. That's where I met Tom.
That's right.
I went cross town over to South Bay. That's where I met John. But the other thing is the NMRA regional things are very important. Not as much as national. I mean, you can meet lots of people in national events, and maybe you'll be able to go to some layout, halfway across the country. I've operated great layouts as a result of national events, but the ones that I keep getting invited to are all around here. Sure, it's where I live.
Yeah.
So I want to meet people around here. So I want to go to my regional things and find out what's here. And the LD SIG is an amazing way to have people with like interests that actually really enjoy doing this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, special interest groups.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when I was a lone wolf, I would still be intrigued and piqued by the conventions. A chance to see stuff, a chance to buy stuff, and attend clinics, learn a little more. And oh my gosh, look, there's all kinds of people that have the same kinds of interests that I do. So you have a bunch of kindred spirits in a geographical area. And it isn't long before you start talking to people. And, even if you're not a super social person, if you're building something, it's like, hey, what are you modeling?
Mhm.
Well, let me tell you about what I'm modeling. Everybody loves to talk about what they're into. And before you know it, a friendship is developed and your network has grown and grown and grown. And if you start falling in with people that operate or know operating people,
Yeah.
it isn't long before you start connecting.
Yeah. Into that regard, there is a difference between the national convention and the national trade show. To me, the national trade show is like going to the mall.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool that you get to see new stuff that people are going to be putting out and all the current stuff that's being put there and that kind of thing. But if you really want to meet more people that are actually actively involved in posting things, the actual convention is a very important cog in that, I think. The other thing is there are train associations that have nothing to do with the NMRA. The Engagers, I think,
Right.
often kind of goes, forget that. We do our own thing because we're underrepresented. I think narrow gauge has a very specific.
Oh, yeah. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the narrow gauge.
Exactly.
Do you happen to have an interest in narrow gauge?
Yeah.
Just a passing
passing
interest. To the point where I think John and I actually, and you, Murph, did a whole thing on my adventures at the Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge
There you
Convention
go.
last year.
Right. That's yeah. So it's not just enough to say. Well, actually, it may be enough to say, "Oh, I want to operate." But if you have any kind of specific goals for that, you might want to refine. Learn about what's available to your sector of the hobby, because we all have our own sector, and pursue that. It's really kind of amazing how many different ways there are to enjoy the hobby.
Mhm.
I
That's true.
have found that I enjoy far more than I thought I would.
Mhm.
The whole G scale thing was just a shock to me, and yet I was like a kid at a candy store at Ray's. So there we go.
I was really surprised to find garden scale layouts that are built for ops, but there are a lot of them,
Cool.
and they're all over the place. And
Yeah.
I think Ray's was the first one that I ever saw, like his Helix,
Yes.
right? It's
Oh,
this
yeah.
huge garden scale Helix. The thing's like, I don't know, what is that, like 16 feet in
Oh, it is.
It's like
diameter?
a single car garage, I think.
Yeah,
Actually.
it's huge.
Close.
And it's hidden inside a mountain even, which makes it even more interesting.
That he
'cause you
made
go-
out of concrete.
Yeah.
you
Chicken
go
wire.
right. You go
Yeah.
inside the mountain. You're like, oh, it's actually a helix in here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention that too. That my take on how do you get into operating groups, and I think probably the OPSIG is like the
place.
best place
Yeah.
because you can get involved with NMRA, and there's a lot of cross membership between OPSIG people and NMRA.
Mhm.
I would mention, or I would
But
guess,
it isn't exclusive.
it's
No,
not,
no,
and you
yeah.
don't even have to be a member of the NMRA to be involved with the OPSIG.
Right.
And OPSIG, in case people are wondering, it's Operations Special Interest Group. That's what the acronym is, OPSIG. They have a website, I'm pretty sure, called opsig.org.
I think so.
They have
Are they
publications.
associated with LDC?
What's that?
Are they directly associated with
I
LDC?
know.
I think they're separate
okay.
groups, but they
They
share
mesh a lot.
they share a lot of common individuals.
Right, and that's another special interest group, the LDSIG, which is Layout Design Special Interest Group. You'll find a lot of operators in
Yes.
both of those groups because the OPSIG, obviously, it's Operation Special Interest Group, so of course they're going to be there. But the LDSIG, because people who are designing layouts for operations quite often will populate the LDSIG. So if you're involved with the OPSIG and the LDSIG, you're almost certain to find someone with an operating layout somewhere near you or close. It depends where you live too. I mean, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you might have to be the one to build the layout and have other people come to you. It just depends. But I do think that getting yourself out there is a really big step, because if all you do is sit in your basement or sit in, in your room wishing you could do something, and it doesn't matter what it is. If you're just sitting around wishing you could do anything, it's not going to happen. You actually have to do something.
Yeah, got to get up.
Right? For me, the hardest part of any project is getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like getting out there to actually talk to people. Like I got to tell you, when I was, did someone have a special? Oh, this is excellent. Yes. Have donuts too available. If you want people to come, you got to have the donuts.
Yeah, like that.
But one of the things I think that really got me, I guess, plugged into our local community was learning about our DCC lunch and actually going to it. Not once, but going a few times, and then it became several times, and you start talking to people. And the really cool thing so let me tell you what DCC lunch is. So I guess a number of years ago, when DCC was first kind of starting, this is the land of technology, right? We're in Silicon Valley here, and a bunch of people got together and I guess started talking about how can we integrate technology with model railroading. And that's kind of the impetus for this DCC lunch, as we call it. And I've been to DCC lunches where there's 15 or 16 people. I've been to DCC lunches where there's only 6 or 7 people, or 5 or 6 people show up. But the point is, there's all these different people, and it's pretty informal. So when you show up, you take whatever seat's available. So you almost always sit next to someone different, because unless you go with the same people and you always sit on the same end of the table. My point is, though, you'll get to talk to more people, meet more people, find out what they're doing. Many times they have layouts, or they're part of groups, operating groups that have layouts, and you'll just get talking to people. And as long as you're not a weirdo or a douchebag or something, you'll get invited eventually. I'm not sure how that worked for me, because I actually got invited, and I'm a weirdo and a douchebag. But the thing is to get out there, though, and I think that's like the number one step to doing anything, especially that involves other people.
Yeah.
So it's funny too, because I have this YouTube channel and 2,000 videos about trains and model trains, and people I think are really surprised when I meet them out places, and they're like, "Oh, do you have a layout?" Like, actually, I don't have a layout, but I know a lot of people with layouts, and I get to operate a lot on a lot of different layouts all over the place. And I don't think it's because I do what I do. I think it's because I'm not afraid to put myself out there, and it's like, tell someone like, "Hey, Charlie, don't you operate at Joe's layout? Could you get me invited to that? Because I've heard about it and it seems like a really cool layout."
Right, and that's what happens. And that's exactly what happens.
We might have that conversation, and Joe might be trying to get rid of someone that's messing up his op sessions, and he can invite me instead that day.
Yeah, we even invite John without a camera in his hand to come out to our layout. So there you go.
Yeah, and then I end up with a camera in my hand anyway.
Usually,
That's me. I'm the guy at rail fanning at the op session. And I see people looking at me sometimes like, "Oh, okay, well, he does YouTube." So they humor me, I guess. But don't do that if you're not a professional like I am. Don't take your camera out at the op session. People will get pissed at you. Okay, I don't know, maybe not. It depends if you stab the trains or not.
If you take the camera out, point it at the trains, not the other people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and no selfies. That's just self-absorbed.
Just bad form.
Yeah, that's tacky.
I've seen you taking selfies before. Come on, what do you mean tacky?
It was a video. I was
Oh, that's
talking to the
different.
video. It was a
that's what that
selfie
was.
video.
That was.
Yeah, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a
Inner-
professional.
Because the fact that you almost have cramps in your hands from holding the camera in front of you, taking your own picture, that's that part. I see you doing that in the car when I'm driving. You're always doing something.
This is what I get at the op sessions too. This guy constantly. Oh man, why are you invited today? I don't remember.
so as Dave Hammer says, Silicon Valley Lines actually does remote ops every month.
That's right.
Oh yes.
We have local operators and remote operators, and we basically put the feed live on Friday nights or Saturday mornings, whichever we're doing. And so hopefully you can tune in and hopefully not find me saying bad things on the dispatch channel.
It depends who's operating that day, Murph.
That's true.
And whether they're going to follow the instructions given by the dispatcher, because
Yeah.
you're God.
Yes. Just ask me.
Also, yeah. I have to mention also that it's one of my favorite stories, and I call this a story. Okay, it's not a story like you're reading that out of a book, but one of my favorite stories is how Silicon Valley Lines developed remote operations so that you can operate on their layout from anywhere in the world. Now, okay, it's not the same as being there because one, you don't get donuts. You have to supply those on your own if you come to a remote.
Yeah.
You can't have remote donuts. It just doesn't work.
We're working on it. It's
Yeah.
Silicon Valley. We're working on it.
Yeah, right. But my point is that you can, as a matter of fact, you've had people operate from across the pond, right? You've
Oh yeah, we've
people
had
operate
operators from London. I think we had a guy from Australia.
right?
We had a guy from a hot tub in Cancun. That was an interesting one.
Isn't it cool that you can do that? Now, it's also not the same because, remote ops is, at least because I've participated in the remote ops from here just to see what it was and to make a video showing that this is, what they're doing. And so what I did was kind of just a through train. It was not, there was no heavy switching or anything, which is what I really like to do. So it was running the train from one end of the layout across the layout to the other end where it terminated. Now, I don't know because I'm going to ask you, Murph, because you're involved directly. Are there more like switch style jobs now, or is it
no? We mostly just have. You might have to switch out a couple cars at hours or something like at one of the yards or something like that, and that's usually handled by a local crew, and
Right.
they'll let you know when it's time to go again, because you can't see behind. Matter of
Right.
fact, we have a little bit of a problem with people like losing half a train going up the helix, and they don't know until somebody like from the club tells them.
May I ask, just because I'm not familiar with remote ops like that, how do you control the trains? How does a guy at home
Well,
control the trains on the
I
land?
think it was Bernard,
Yeah, it
our
was.
previous president of the
Mhm.
club, developed a web-based interface that ties into JMRI.
Ah,
And so you have on your screen, you bring up your web browser
mhm.
and you select a particular engine. And there, we've put a camera car in front of the engine
Mhm.
so you can see where you're going. You can see all the signs. You can see the signals, which sometimes are correct, right, Dave? And then you have a throttle. And so, you basically, you will call dispatch and ask for my permission to see if you get to go. And if you're lucky enough, I'll give you some authority, and you can move to the whatever block I tell you.
Okay,
And you can watch the signs go by, and you can see the signals.
so it's done through JMRI with the throttle control on the screen.
Should we
Right,
explain what
exactly.
JMRI is? Do you think everybody?
Boy, that's a whole other.
well, we don't have to get
can of
into
worms,
it, but we should.
Java Model Railroad Interface.
I think the final word interface is the salient point.
Yeah, it's an interface.
It's
for
basically an
computers.
interface between the computer and your DCC control computer,
Yeah,
so that you can send commands from the computer to the DCC controller the same way that your cab sends commands to the DCC controller, so you can control a train remotely.
Yeah.
right. And this all came out of necessity. When the COVID quarantines hit, we were in danger of like having the club die. And so it was putting these camera cars in front, figuring out a way to control it. And all of a sudden we had people like I was saying, joining from London, joining from Australia. We had Dave joining from Chicagoland. And so, it kind of kept the interest going, and now it's just an integral part of our session. I never have to worry about having somebody to run through trains, which sometimes, especially in the middle of the summer when everybody's on vacation, there were times where it's like, well, let me see, we have enough people to run 3 trains, but somebody's got to run a yard. That happens at train clubs every once in a while. So anyway, it's kind of kept everything going really nicely. So
Yeah. I remember it was just a through train for me. Now it was early on. It was
Yeah.
early on in the remote ops era, right? During
Yeah.
COVID. But that was something interesting. I feel like I need to mention JMRI is a lot more than just controlling stuff. JMRI does a ton of things and is probably one of, if not the best invention in model railroading probably in the past 30 years, other than maybe DCC or something like that, just because of how versatile it is. But at the same time, well, let me put it this way. When it works, it's really good. And I don't mean that to say that it has a lot of failure, but it can be a little clunky at times. And I don't
finicky.
Yeah, I don't know if that's because it's using Java, which is kind of an old, I guess, platform. But what it does, though, is pretty remarkable, especially considering it's a free resource.
Open source, yes.
Yeah.
It's open source. It interfaces with 10 different DCC systems. It has to interface with Windows machines or Macs or Linux machines. People run JMRI on Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
It supports a whole lot of hardware and a whole lot of different environments. And from working at a computer company, that's a real darn hard thing to do.
And there's no one person supporting it, so it's a consortium of people. So keeping it from unraveling is a challenge.
Right.
And it's quite mature. What is it? 20 years old now?
Something like that. Yeah.
So by the way, give to JMRI if you use it once a year. Just put it on your Christmas thing. Here, JMRI. Here's a Christmas present. I do it every year.
I notice Dave Hammer here mentions, do people know that your cell phone or tablet can be used as a throttle? Fact is, I've started using my cell phone to run my railroad. Not for any esoteric reason, simply because I have a Digitrack system. I have the radio-controlled throttles, which require batteries. And it's like, okay, it's time to run a train, get a battery out of the battery charger, pop open the back of the throttle, which isn't always easy, seat the battery, put it back on, plug the throttle in. I know NCEs don't have to do this, but plug it in to acquire. It's a lot of steps. On the phone, I simply pull up the app, I hit start layout, and then select locomotive and start running. And it's like, this is very convenient.
Yeah. And for that matter, I've been designing panels for my layout and can control both my staging areas from an iPad. All the turnouts, all the routes. We get a little light that lights up when the route's set correctly and we're ready to roll. So it has a bunch of different uses.
I've been thinking about the fact that video cameras have gotten so tiny that rather than putting a camera car in front of your locomotives, how soon will it be before you'll buy a Rapido locomotive and where the headlight is or whatever, there's a camera and the DCC controller is broadcasting a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi stream that you can see on your iPad. So now your iPad, you can see what the engineer is seeing, and on the right-hand side is the cab controls. So, that's not that far into the future. That's doable today if someone...
What you just described is actually very similar to that JMRI remote throttle that they use for SBL.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, technically with an F unit, you can probably do it right about now.
Yes. Which would be so cool.
Any cowl unit, right? The wide units like that, where you can fit more junk inside, you probably do that.
I mean, the camera boards right now have
just
a PC board about this wide, which just is a little, you might be able to trim a wee off of each side and kind of get it close enough to where the marker lights are or something in there, or look through the cab windows.
Yep.
Might work.
There's all kinds of cool things we could do to make operations even more fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I realize that a lot of people really like that tactile interaction
I do too.
with
I
the throttle,
like the
like
physical
turning a knob, and like with NCE, right? You go to Dave's, Loveless, and he has the big, I guess they call them
The
dog
dog bones.
bones or hammerheads or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like those because they have all the buttons on them, and you can access all the different functions. But he also has the little ones. I don't remember what they're called, but they have the knob on
Utility throttles, whatever.
Cabo 6.
Cabo 6, that's it. And I've gotten to really like that knob on that thing.
Yeah.
And you can still turn the light on and off, and you can still turn the bell and the horn. And I realized I still like the hammerhead, don't get me wrong. But I realized with that little knob one, it has all the major functionality that you would want out of it. But there's something about the knob that's more, it controls more accurately than this digital thing where you're pushing up or down.
Yeah, you've got tactile feedback.
Mhm.
Well, it's easy on the phone to have your finger move off the throttle slider,
Yes.
Yes.
and then Lord knows what you're punching.
Yeah, and you have to look at the phone to
Well,
actually.
I was just going to
do
say,
it,
so the
right?
real advantage, especially a lot of layouts that are one-man crews, one-person crews, where you're doing the engineer job and the conductor job.
Mhm.
And when I'm working the yard, which is my favorite thing, right? I'm working on, I'm looking at the car cards. I'm looking where am I going to uncouple? Where am I going to place this car? Is the turnout thrown right? The nice thing is you can work that tab throttle
With
blind.
Yes, with the knob, right?
With the knob,
Yeah.
because you can just
Yep.
work it with your thumb. You know where it is. You know what it's doing. And in fact, with Cab 06s, if they're set right, you can do the direction change with a single button push.
Yeah.
And so I find that I can just operate with my left hand. It's blind, and I've got my right hand free to do everything else. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's hard to do with a phone.
Here's a piece of trivia for you. Did you know that all the I'm going to call them the locomotive product spotlights on this channel are filmed with me using a phone as a controller? It's quite amazing, if I say so myself. Yeah, yeah.
Fixing that.
I like the handheld controllers better myself.
Yeah.
You use what you have, and everybody carries a phone around, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
The only question is, what does your train do if you're using your phone as a throttle and you get a phone call? What happens?
If you switch to the phone, usually it stops the train, which is not necessarily the best thing.
That could actually be a very bad thing.
That could be a
But
bad-
it's better than continuing to run without
At least that's the
control.
way it
without
works
any
with
control.
Y throttle on the iPhone. I find Sydney's thing about moving a switch with your finger. I have a switching area on my layout called Felton, where I use the flips switches.
The Caboose Hobbies.
The Caboose hub, because I like ground throws for local switching a lot.
Mm.
I don't have to keep looking up at a panel and down and up and down. I just go. I actually really like that. So
Well, I like the tactile thing, but I don't like the visual impact of it. So I created this little. I think I showed you this, Tom. I created this little slider thing where you put your finger through the hole in the fascia,
right,
right, and it just uses a cable, a throttle cable.
Yeah.
And you slide it, click,
I like
so you
that.
still get the tactile feel. It uses you can use something like a bullfrog from,
right,
but I use with the blue. What are they?
right.
Blue Point.
Blue points.
Blue points, yeah.
Right. Although I'm moving to servos now. but-
Joe Fugate used to kind of push that with he'd use a door latch or
Yes.
a gate latch, and all it would do is pull a
Yep.
cable, and he had a spring to pull it back. And I
Yep.
was like, that would work. I'd be happy with that.
Yep.
So,
Mm.
yeah.
All kinds of ways to actuate it to get that tactile physical feel, physical feedback.
Nice. We didn't get a chance to look at your map, but we're almost out of time.
No,
too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's
we're-
okay.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap this up, but I don't know how to wrap it up. I mean, other than, well, actually, I know one way to wrap it up. Remember, oops, wrong one. That's odd. That's
What's
not
so
the wrong
wrong about
one.
that?
I clicked
Oh.
the right one. This is the right one. Watch for this thumbnail in the future, because when our other friend Dave that we've been talking about, talking about Dave's layout, this whole past hour and a half, 2 hours that we've been talking,
Pretty much.
he'll
Yeah.
be here. And I don't know how we're going to fit 5 people across the table. We're going to have to maybe,
It's okay. I'll just be across the room fanboying the whole time.
right? Yeah, we could
No.
we could be at one table, Murph in the other
You
room,
three make me happy. You're part of what's fun in the hobby.
right?
So,
But watch for this thumbnail, the one that doesn't say postponed on it, and that'll be the one you definitely want to catch, because the clinic that Charlie, Tom, and Dave gave at the PCR convention a few months ago was really good, and it was about the most fun you've ever had model railroading. There's a whole story behind how it got that name, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we do it. But I want to mention it because it's kind of geared toward new operators. But if you could see the people who were in the room physically at the convention, there were no new operators. Well,
There were a few.
There were some new operators, but there were people who have been operating and have operated on more layouts than all of us combined.
We were basically teaching beginning addition and subtraction to a bunch of math PhDs.
Yeah, basically. But they sat through it the whole time and really seemed to enjoy it. They were engaged. There was no one falling asleep. And even though it was like lunchtime, right, when you gave it, there was no one falling asleep. Now, you did hand out chocolate ahead of time. So the caffeine in the chocolate might have been keeping people awake.
And never underestimate the power of a good bribe.
Yes.
Oh, is that how that worked? I did not get my check, so I'll be hitting you guys. I did get some chocolate.
I was surprised to see the veterans attending our clinic because it was really not intended for them. But
yeah,
I think some of the feedback I got, and I think the reason they enjoyed it is it wasn't that they needed to learn something. I think it was great. Somebody's actually talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
There were, someone's talking to those new people who've never operated before.
Yeah.
And the younger guys, the younger men and women who are getting into the hobby, who don't know about ops, who might participate, and realizing that there's not this barrier.
Right.
to cross.
Well, and also reminiscing about why you had good times, why you do what you do. Sometimes there's some real value in kicking back and going, yeah, we're having a good time here. This is good stuff.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
Yeah. Should we, would you mind if we just went with a final word from each of us?
Okay, we'll start at that end. Murph, you can go first.
Meet people in your hobby in your area, be sociable with them, have some fun.
Yeah, ops is fun. I keep learning. I like trying new jobs. I like doing new things. I like the fact that if I go to one railroad, I learn about how railroads operated in 1942, and I go to a different railroad and figure how they operated in 1999. And you're always learning. So, and I'm always having fun. So I'm never going to stop doing this.
I agree with both Murph and Charlie. And I would just like to add this one thing. If you go to an op session, this is getting back to the etiquette. If you go to an op session and you happen to meet the partner of the layout owner, a lot of times they function as sort of the introductory. Always take an extra minute to thank them for opening their home, for allowing you to come. I think that's important. I think that's special, makes them feel special, and probably helps the layout owner too.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, I thought you were going to invite that John guy. He's a real jerk. But you invited Tom and said, he likes me. Yeah, no, but I after that, I mean, what can I say other than, yeah, I mean, all of the above. And something else I really think that needs to be said is that whole thing about being a good guest. And really what you're talking about is taking that being a good guest even to another step. So listen to what they said, because I don't get invited back anymore. Okay, I'll say something else. Don't have a thin skin, because if you go to the operating session with these guys, especially this guy,
No, I'm an angel. Come
he's
on.
gonna give it to you the whole time, and you got to give it back. And if you have a thin skin, you'll be afraid because he'll say something that hurt your feelings, and then you'll be afraid to hurt his feelings. You don't have to worry about that because he doesn't have any feelings. Just give it to him fully. Now what happened?
Good-natured ribbing is a part of the game.
Actually, one last thing. I'm sorry, but if you go to an op session and there's a kid there,
Don't
understand. Kids know how to play, and they know how to play by rules too. I've been most impressed with a lot of the younger people we have at SVL that really make our operating sessions fun. So,
You mean when I come?
well, yeah, you just act like a child. That's different.
Oh, okay. Well, now that we got that out of the way, now that we understand each other, I do want to mention one last thing before we go, which is Heath, Human City Junction. This guy, let me just put him up here. My understanding is that Heath is going to go live in about, he's supposed to go live like right now. So why don't I push the end the stream button? Thank you guys for coming. It's
Great
always
time.
fun.
All right.
Thank you everyone for watching and participating in our comments. And we will catch you all on the next one next month.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.